Evan Cole was a quiet man by nature. He had always been that way, even back on Earth. He did his work, paid his bills, and spoke only when needed. When the human expansion program sent him to Outpost R-17, a distant space station on the edge of known space, Evan thought it would suit him well. Fewer people, fewer conversations, more machines than voices. Outpost R-17 floated near a red dwarf star, surrounded by dark space and drifting metal debris from old wars. It was not a place for heroes. It was a place for maintenance workers, supply officers, and forgotten contracts. Evan worked as a systems technician, checking life support lines, power grids, and old alien machinery that humans barely understood. Humans were not the strongest species on the station, not even close. There were tall, insect-like traders, stone-skinned miners, and towering warriors from species that could bend steel with their hands. Humans survived here because they were adaptable, careful, and useful. But physically, they were small, weak, easy to ignore. Evan knew this. He lived with it every day. 3 weeks ago, an accident changed everything. A pressure valve exploded while Evan was repairing an old coolant line. He reacted fast, sealing the breach, but not fast enough to avoid injury. The blast threw him across the corridor. His left arm fractured and his ribs cracked. Medical treatment on R-17 was basic. No full regeneration, only pain suppressors and time. The station doctor gave him a warning. "You should not be cooking or lifting heavy items for at least a month," the doctor said. "Your bones need rest." Evan nodded, embarrassed. He lived alone in a small residential unit. Cooking was already hard for him. Now it was almost impossible. The station administration noticed his declining condition. Productivity reports showed Evan missing meals, losing weight, and making small mistakes at work. That was unacceptable on a station where one mistake could kill hundreds, so they assigned him help. Evan did not expect her. When he returned to his quarters after a long shift, the door was already unlocked. That alone made his heart beat faster. He stepped inside carefully. The lights were on, and something very large was standing near his small kitchen unit. She had to duck slightly under the ceiling beams. Her shoulders were broad, her arms thick with dense muscle. Her skin was a deep muted gray-blue, smooth but marked with faint natural patterns that looked like stone veins. She wore a simple station-issued apron over functional clothing meant for her species. She turned when she heard him. Her eyes were dark gold, steady and unreadable. "Evan Cole," she said. Her voice was deep, calm, and precise. "I am Carathal. I have been assigned as your cook." Evan froze. Carathal, he knew that species. They were called Varkai in human records, giants, warriors. A species that once fought humans during early expansion conflicts, not because humans were a threat, but because they were in the way. The war had been short. Humans lost more ships, the Varkai lost none. A treaty followed, cold and uneasy, and now one of them was standing in his kitchen. I didn't ask for this," Evan said softly. "You did not," Carathal replied. "The station administration did." She looked down at his injured arm. Her gaze lingered for a moment longer than necessary. "You are unfit to prepare your own nutrition," she continued. "Your survival probability will decrease without assistance." Evan swallowed. "You're very large." "That is correct." Silence filled the room. The hum of the station's life support system seemed suddenly loud. "I will cook," Carathal said. "I will ensure your recovery. I will not interfere with your duties unless ordered." Her words were polite, controlled. But something about her presence made Evan's skin prickle. She did not move much. She did not fidget. She simply stood there, solid and unmoving like a wall. "Okay," Evan said quietly. "I thank you," she nodded once. That night, Carathal cooked his first meal. Evan sat at the small table feeling strange. He was used to eating packaged ration bars or simple heat meals. The food placed before him was warm, rich-smelling, and carefully arranged. It looked real. "What is this?" he asked. "A nutrient-balanced dish suitable for humans," she replied, "modified for bone recovery." He hesitated, then took a bite. It was the best meal he had eaten in years. As the days passed, Carathal became a constant presence in his quarters. She arrived before his shifts and left after he slept. She cleaned, cooked, organized. She never complained, never asked for payment beyond what the station provided. But she watched him, always watched, not in a threatening way, not openly. But Evan often felt her gaze on him when she thought he was not looking, studying his movements, his breathing, his expressions. She asked questions while cooking. "Do humans experience fear daily?" she asked one evening. "Yes," Evan answered. "I think so." "How do you function while afraid?" He thought about it. "You just do." She was silent after that. Another day she asked, "When humans are weaker than their enemy, what do they do?" Evan shrugged. "We find another way." Her knife paused mid-cut. "Another way to win." "Sometimes," Evan said. "Sometimes just another way to survive." Each meal tasted slightly different, richer, warmer, stronger. After a few days, Evan noticed changes. His pain faded faster than expected. His fractured arm healed quickly. His exhaustion disappeared. He slept deeply and dreamed vividly, strange dreams of standing in dark places, heart racing but still moving forward. He also felt alert, too alert. His reflexes sharpened. Sounds seemed clearer. His emotions felt closer to the surface. Fear came easily, but so did focus. Station sensors recorded unusual biological readings during his sleep cycles. Evan did not know that yet. Carathal did. She reviewed the data silently from her wrist console while Evan slept. On the seventh day, Evan woke before his alarm. His heart was beating fast, but he was not tired. He sat up confused. The door to his quarters slid shut with a soft mechanical sound. Locked. Carathal stood near the entrance. Her apron was gone. "Carathal?" Evan asked, his voice unsteady. "Is something wrong?" "Yes," she said calmly. "The observation period is complete." Fear crawled up Evan's spine. "Observation," he whispered. She stepped closer. Each step made the floor vibrate slightly. "My species believes humans are dangerous," she said. "Not because of strength, but because of unpredictability." Evan backed up until the table pressed against his legs. "I was assigned to determine if that belief is true." His mouth went dry. "By cooking for me." "The nutrition was a catalyst," she replied. "The real test is your response now." She knelt down in front of him. Even kneeling, she was taller than him sitting. "You are afraid," Carathal said. "Your heart rate confirms it." Evan nodded slowly. "Yes. Most species beg," she continued. "Some attack, some freeze." "What happens to them?" Evan asked. "They fail." She leaned closer. Her presence was overwhelming. Her species emitted a natural pressure response. A biological intimidation field evolved to break enemies. Evan felt it hit him like a weight. His hands trembled. His chest tightened. Panic threatened to take over. But he did not scream. He did not attack. He closed his eyes, took a slow breath, and spoke. "I don't know what you want from me," he said quietly, "but I'm still here." Carathal's eyes widened slightly. "You are still afraid," she said. "Yes," Evan replied. "But fear doesn't stop us. It just tells us something matters." The station sensors spiked. Carathal felt something she had never felt before: uncertainty. And for the first time since entering Evan Cole's life, the giant alien woman did not know what the final outcome would be. The test was not over. It had only just begun. Carathal did not move for several long seconds. She stayed kneeling, her large frame still, her golden eyes fixed on Evan's face. The pressure she released filled the room like heavy air, meant to crush resolve and force submission. It had broken trained soldiers of other species in moments. Evan felt it fully. His vision blurred at the edges. His breath came faster. His hands shook so badly he had to grip the edge of the table to stay upright. Every instinct told him to run, to hide, to curl inward and wait for the fear to pass. But the door was locked. And more than that, he realized something important. Running would not change anything. He swallowed and forced himself to look at her again. "I'm not strong," Evan said quietly. "I know that. I never pretended otherwise." Carathal tilted her head slightly. "Then why do you resist?" "I'm not resisting," he answered. "I'm deciding." That answer made her pause. The pressure eased just a little. "Explain," she said. Evan took another slow breath. His heart still raced, but his thoughts felt sharp, focused like they were during a critical repair job. Fear was there, but it had become background noise instead of control. "I decide what fear means," he said. "If it means I stop, then I lose. If it means I keep going, then maybe I don't." Carathal rose to her feet. She towered over him again, but she did not increase the pressure. Instead, she stepped back and unlocked the door with a gesture. "You will not be harmed at this time," she said. "The test continues." Evan sagged into the chair, his legs weak. "That was a test." "Yes. What happens if I fail the next one?" Carathal looked at him for a long moment. "Then my report will recommend containment of your species." That sentence hit harder than the pressure ever could. "You mean humans?" Evan asked. "Yes." He stared at the floor. "Because of me." "Because of what you represent," she corrected. "One human under controlled conditions." Evan let out a quiet breath. "That's not fair." "Fairness is a human concept," Carathal replied. "Survival is universal." She turned and moved toward the kitchen as if the conversation had ended. Evan watched her in disbelief. "You're just going to keep cooking?" he asked. "Yes." He almost laughed, but it came out shaky. "After that." "The test does not end because you felt fear," she said. "It ends when I understand you." The next days were harder. Carathal changed nothing on the surface. She cooked. She cleaned. She maintained the same calm tone. But now Evan knew what was happening beneath it. Every action, every word, every reaction was being observed and measured. The food changed again. It was still good, too good, but it left Evan feeling different. His body felt light fast. His thoughts came quicker. Emotions rose faster too. Fear appeared more often, sharper and clearer, like an alarm that would not shut off. And yet, every time it came, he found himself responding better. When a power fluctuation nearly caused a blackout in his sector, Evan reacted faster than anyone else. He rerouted systems under pressure, hands steady despite the alarms blaring around him. Later, the supervisor praised him for exceptional performance. Evan felt no pride, only the lingering echo of fear and something else. Clarity. Carathal observed everything. Her wrist console tracked Evan's biological changes, elevated neural activity, faster recovery rates, increased stress tolerance. The catalyst compound in his meals was doing exactly what it was designed to do, expose limits. But instead of breaking, Evan was adapting. One evening, after a long shift, Evan returned to his quarters and found Carathal waiting for him, not in the kitchen but seated, carefully on the reinforced floor near the wall. That alone unsettled him. "You're sitting," he said. "The structure cannot support my weight on standard furniture," she replied. "This position is acceptable." He nodded and set his bag down. "Is something else being tested?" "Yes, of course it was." "What now?" Evan asked. "Honesty," Carathal said. She gestured for him to sit across from her. He did, keeping some distance. "You are afraid of me," she stated. "Yes," Evan said without hesitation. "Why?" "Because you could hurt me," he replied. "Because you might already be doing it. Because you're judging my entire species based on how I react." She listened without interrupting. "And yet," she said, "you do not avoid me." Evan thought about that. "If I avoid you, I lose information. If I lose information, I make mistakes." "Fear makes people blind if they let it." Carathal studied his face. "Your species has no natural intimidation defense, no strength advantage, no hardened biology." "No," Evan agreed. "We just keep going." She was silent for a long time. "My people evolved to dominate," she said finally. "Fear is a weapon to us. When we project it, others submit. They become predictable." And humans? Evan asked. Humans become complicated, she said. That night Evan dreamed again. He stood in a narrow corridor filled with smoke. Alarms screamed. He could feel fear pounding in his chest, telling him to stop, to hide. But his feet kept moving, step by step, through heat and noise and uncertainty. He woke up sweating but calm. The next test came without warning. During Evan's shift, a controlled emergency was triggered in his work sector. A simulated hull breach, red lights, lockdown procedures, evacuation alerts. Everyone else froze, waiting for orders. Evan did not. He moved. He sealed bulkheads, rerouted power, and stabilized pressure manually. His hands shook, but his mind stayed clear. He remembered every failure scenario, every emergency drill he had half forgotten before. By the time command arrived, the crisis was over. Later in his quarters, Carathal reviewed the footage with him. "You were afraid," she said. "Yes. Your stress levels were extreme. I know. And yet you performed beyond expected parameters." Evan leaned back against the wall. "Fear doesn't make us useless," he said. "It just makes things urgent." Carathal stared at the screen, then at him. "This is not consistent with our models," she admitted. "Maybe your models are wrong," Evan said softly. For the first time, Carathal did not correct him. Instead, she asked a question she had not planned to ask. "What would you do," she said, "if your species were truly threatened?" Evan answered without thinking. "We'd be scared," he said, "all of us. And then we'd figure something out. We always do." "Even if the threat was stronger than you?" she asked. "Especially then." Something shifted in Carathal's posture. Not weakness, not surrender, reevaluation. That night Evan noticed she did not stand as close as before. The pressure she emitted was lower, controlled, respectful. The following day, a message arrived from Varkai command channels. Carathal read it privately. Her expression did not change, but her grip tightened on the console. The message was clear. Escalate the test. If the human breaks, conclude the report. If not, reassess doctrine. Carathal looked at Evan as he worked at the table, quietly fixing a broken device, humming softly under his breath. He looked small, fragile, and somehow more dangerous than anything she had ever faced. The next phase would decide everything. And for the first time in her long life, Carathal felt something close to fear, not of what Evan might do, but of what he might prove. The next phase began quietly, too quietly. Evan noticed it the moment he woke up. The usual hum of station systems felt different, softer, like something was being held back. The lights were dimmer than normal, and the air felt heavy, thick against his lungs. He sat up slowly, his senses sharp, his mind already alert. Fear whispered immediately. "Something is wrong." Carathal stood near the door, already awake. She was fully dressed in her functional uniform, not the simple clothing she wore while cooking. Her posture was straight, formal, as if she were back on a battlefield. "You feel it," she said. "Yes," Evan replied. "What did you do?" "I did nothing," she answered. "The station did." As if summoned by her words, the station alarm sounded, low and steady, not the sharp emergency tone, but the warning signal used for internal testing and drills. Evan's heart began to race. "Is this another test?" he asked. "Yes," Carathal said, "but not only for you." The lights flickered. A status panel on the wall activated, showing multiple system alerts across different sectors. Power instability, environmental fluctuation, security lockdowns. "This is not normal," Evan said, "even for drills." "It is controlled," Carathal replied, "but complex." Evan stood, ignoring the dull ache that still lingered in his healing ribs. "Complex means unpredictable." She looked at him. "Correct." They stepped into the corridor together. Other station residents were emerging from their quarters, confused and uneasy. Evan could see fear on their faces, humans and aliens alike. Some froze, some argued, some waited for instructions that had not yet come. Evan did not wait. He moved toward the nearest control panel, scanning the data as he walked. His mind felt clear, sharp, Like everything he had learned over years of quiet work was suddenly easy to access. "Carathal," he said, "this isn't just about me anymore." "No," she admitted. It never was. A sudden tremor ran through the station. Someone screamed down the corridor. Fear surged hard this time, like a wave crashing into him. But instead of freezing, Evan felt something else rise with it: responsibility. "If this test hurts people, I won't do it," he said firmly. Carathal stopped walking. Slowly she turned to face him. "You would refuse?" she asked. "Yes," Evan said. His voice shook, but he did not back down. "Whatever you're trying to prove, it's not worth lives." For a moment Carathal said nothing. Then she did something unexpected. She lowered her head slightly. "The scenario will not cause permanent harm," she said, "but your response is noted." That small gesture sent a chill through Evan. A giant warrior lowering her head was not a small thing. They reached the control hub of Evan's sector. The door was sealed. "No access," Evan muttered, reading the panel. "Security override required." Carathal placed her hand on the door. Metal groaned softly as she applied controlled force. The lock disengaged with a loud click. Evan stared. "You could have done that any time." "Yes." "Good to know," he said faintly. Inside, the control room was chaos. Alerts flashed across multiple displays. Automated systems were compensating for simulated failures, but some of the responses were slow, too slow. "This is testing reaction chains," Evan said, "seeing how people respond under layered pressure." "Correct," Carathal said. "Most species prioritize self-preservation." "And humans?" Evan asked. "We are still collecting data." Evan moved to the main console and began issuing commands. He rerouted power manually, stabilized pressure fluctuations, and opened communication lines between isolated sectors. His hands shook. Sweat rolled down his back. Fear was everywhere now, real fear, not just pressure or threat, but it felt familiar, like an old enemy he had learned to work with. As he worked, Evan noticed something strange. Other people were starting to move, not because of orders from command, but because of him. A human woman from logistics followed his instructions without question. An alien miner from a heavy-gravity species took over a manual valve when Evan pointed it out. Fear was still there, but his calm focus seemed to spread. Carathal watched silently. Her internal monitors recorded a phenomenon her people had never fully understood. Humans under fear did not always collapse. Sometimes they coordinated. A sudden alarm screamed louder than the others. "Hull integrity warning. Sector C." "That's not part of a drill," Evan said sharply. "Is it?" Carathal checked her console, her eyes narrowed. "No," she said, "that variable was not scheduled." Fear spiked again, this time not controlled. "This is real," Evan said. "Someone messed up." Or something unexpected happened. Without waiting, Evan ran. Sector C was farther from his assigned area, but he knew the layout well. He sprinted through corridors, lungs burning, heart pounding. Carathal followed easily, her long strides covering ground fast. When they arrived, the damage was obvious. A section of the outer hull had fractured. Emergency fields were holding for now. Workers were trapped inside, frozen in panic. Evan skidded to a stop, gasping. "If that field drops," he began. "They will die," Carathal finished. She turned to him. "This exceeds test parameters." "Then stop the test," Evan snapped. Now, Carathal hesitated. That hesitation terrified Evan more than the alarms. "Do it," he said, "please." She opened a command channel, but before she could send the override, the emergency field flickered. Time slowed. Fear screamed in Evan's head. He acted. He grabbed a portable stabilizer unit from the wall and ran toward the damaged section, ignoring the warning lights. Carathal shouted something behind him, but he didn't stop. He reached the control node and slammed the stabilizer into place, hands moving on instinct. The unit whined, struggling to compensate. "It won't hold," he muttered. Carathal reached him in seconds. She braced herself against the bulkhead, using her body as reinforcement, her strength keeping the fractured metal from tearing further. "Evan," she said sharply, "your body cannot withstand this pressure." "I know," he replied, teeth clenched, "but theirs can't either." The stabilizer screamed, then steadied. The emergency field stabilized. The alarms softened. Silence fell slowly. Evan collapsed to his knees, shaking violently. Fear finally caught up with him, crashing down all at once. He laughed weakly, half from relief, half from shock. Carathal looked down at him, her expression unreadable. "You risked your life," she said. "Yes," Evan said. "I was scared." "That is not logical," she said. "Fear should have prevented action." Evan looked up at her. "Fear told me it mattered." Rescue teams arrived moments later. The trapped workers were safe. Later, back in Evan's quarters, medical staff treated his injuries. His ribs ached again and his arm throbbed, but he was alive. Carathal stood nearby, silent. When the medics left, Evan spoke first. "Was that still part of the test?" he asked. "No," Carathal said quietly. "That was a failure of control." "And yet," Evan said, "you got your data." "Yes." She moved closer, then did something Evan never expected. She knelt, not in threat, not in dominance, in acknowledgement. "You acted despite fear," she said. "You prioritized others over self-preservation. You influenced those around you. You adapted faster than predicted." Evan stared at her. "I almost died." "Yes," she said, "and you knew that." "Then why does it feel like I passed?" he asked. Carathal's voice lowered. "Because you did something my people find deeply unsettling." "What?" Evan asked. "You made fear irrelevant." That night, Carathal sent a partial report to her superiors. It did not conclude, it warned. Humans were not strong, they were not fearless. They were worse. They were a species that moved forward while afraid, and if pushed far enough, they would not break. They would change the rules. The test was no longer about Evan Cole. It was about whether the galaxy was ready to face what humans truly were. The station did not return to normal after the incident. Official reports called it a compound systems failure during a controlled exercise. But everyone on Outpost R-17 knew that was only half the truth. The corridors were quieter. Conversations stopped when Carathal passed by. Humans looked at Evan differently now, not with awe but with a strange mix of relief and worry. Relief, because he had saved lives. Worry, because they sensed something larger was moving around him. Evan himself felt it too. His body hurt more than before. The medical staff warned him that pushing himself again so soon could cause lasting damage. He nodded and listened, but part of him knew that things would not slow down. Not now. Fear was always there, hovering at the edge of his thoughts, but it no longer felt like an enemy. Carathal remained with him, officially still assigned as his cook and caretaker. Unofficially, she was something else now. Her posture around him had changed. She no longer filled the space with quiet dominance. She kept a measured distance as if giving him room. One evening, while she prepared food, Evan finally asked the question that had been sitting in his chest since the hull breach. "What happens now?" he said. Carathal paused, then continued cutting ingredients with careful precision. "My superiors are reviewing my report." "That sounds bad," Evan said. "It is significant," she replied. He watched her for a moment. "Are they angry?" "They are cautious," Carathal said. "That is worse." Evan sighed and rubbed his face. "I didn't mean to be part of some galaxy-level test." "No human ever does," she said calmly. That night Evan dreamed again. This time he was not alone. He stood in a wide open space, dark and endless. Fear pressed in from all sides, whispering that he was small, that he did not belong here. Around him shapes moved, huge, towering silhouettes. But behind him he felt others. Humans. Quiet, stubborn presences. Not strong individually, but together, unmoving. He woke with his heart pounding. The message arrived the next day. Carathal received it first. Evan knew something was wrong the moment she stiffened, her eyes locking on the data scrolling across her wrist console. "What is it?" he asked. "There will be an envoy," she said. "From my people." Evan's stomach tightened. "Here, yes. When? Soon." That single word carried weight. By the end of the shift cycle, the station was buzzing with tension. Security drones were repositioned. Command staff whispered behind sealed doors. No one said it aloud, but everyone understood. This was not a visit. It was an evaluation. The Varkai envoy arrived aboard a massive warship that dwarfed the station. Its hull was dark and angular, built not for trade or diplomacy, but for intimidation. The docking clamps locked in place with a deep metallic boom that echoed through the station. Evan watched from a corridor viewport as the boarding ramp extended. Fear rose again, sharp and familiar. He let it stay. 3 Varkai entered the station. They were larger than Carathal, broader, heavier. Their presence alone made the air feel denser. The lead figure wore ceremonial armor marked with old battle symbols. This one had seen wars. "This is bad," Evan murmured. "Yes," Carathal agreed. "This is judgment." The meeting was held in a reinforced chamber near command. Evan was not officially invited. Unofficially, Carathal brought him anyway. "If they object, I will remove you," she said quietly. "Comforting," Evan replied. The chamber was cold and bare. The 3 Varkai stood opposite the station's human command staff. Carathal stood slightly behind Evan, her presence steady but restrained. The lead Varkai spoke first. "You are the human," he said, his voice deep and heavy. "Evan Cole." Evan swallowed. "Yes." "You were exposed to a Varkai trial compound," the envoy continued. "You were subjected to fear projection. You interfered with a controlled scenario." "I saved people," Evan said simply. "That was not your role," the envoy replied. Evan felt the pressure then, not Carathal's but stronger, older. It pressed down on him like gravity itself, demanding silence, obedience. Fear surged violently. His knees trembled, but he did not look away. "My role," Evan said, voice shaking, "was to do what needed to be done." The envoy's eyes narrowed. "You speak boldly for one so fragile." "I'm fragile," Evan agreed. "That doesn't mean I'm useless." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Carathal said nothing, but her fists tightened. The 2nd Varkai stepped forward. "Our concern is not your bravery," she said. "It is contagion." Evan frowned. "Contagion. Your behavior influenced others," she said. "Fear did not isolate you. It unified those around you." "That's bad?" Evan asked. "For stability," the lead envoy said. "Yes." Fear deepened, but something else rose with it, anger, quiet and controlled. "So what?" Evan asked. "You're afraid of us." The pressure intensified sharply. "Careful," the envoy warned. Evan's heart hammered, but he continued. "You test us, you scare us, and when we don't break, that scares you instead." Silence fell. Carathal stepped forward at last. "He speaks truth," she said. "Our models are incomplete." The lead envoy turned to her. "You have grown compromised." "I have grown informed," Carathal replied. The envoy looked back at Evan. "Your species has always survived by chance, by avoidance, by adaptation." "Yes," Evan said, and now," the envoy continued, "you adapt to fear itself." Evan nodded slowly. "Because fear isn't the end, it's the beginning." The chamber shook slightly as the envoy released his pressure. He studied Evan as one might study a dangerous tool. "There is one final measure," the envoy said. "A confirmation." Evan felt his blood run cold. "What kind of measure?" "A choice," the envoy replied. "Yours." Carathal turned sharply. "This was not authorized." "It is now," the envoy said. "The human will choose." Evan took a slow breath. "Choose what?" The envoy gestured and a display activated, showing real-time data from the station. "A remote sector, isolated, failing. A controlled crisis," the envoy said. "You may evacuate yourself and those closest to you. Or you may attempt to stabilize the sector, risking your life and others." Evan stared at the screen. Fear exploded in his chest. "You're using lives as proof," he said. "Yes," the envoy replied. "That is the cost of certainty." Carathal moved closer to Evan. This is not acceptable. The envoy ignored her. Choose. Evan closed his eyes. For a moment he wanted to scream, to refuse, to run. Then he remembered the corridor filled with smoke in his dreams, the feeling of moving forward while afraid. He opened his eyes. "I'll go," he said. Carathal grabbed his arm. "Evan, if I don't," he said softly, "they'll just do it again to someone else." The envoy watched closely. "You accept fear." "Yes," Evan said, "but you don't understand it." "And what is it you believe we misunderstand?" the envoy asked. "That fear doesn't make us obey," Evan said. "It makes us decide." The operation began immediately. Evan suited up, hands trembling but steady. Carathal insisted on accompanying him, her massive form filling the corridor beside him. "I will not allow you to face this alone," she said. "Thank you," Evan replied. "I'm still scared." "As you should be," she said. "So am I." They reached the failing sector. The situation was worse than the display suggested. Systems were degrading fast. Time was limited. Evan worked, calling out instructions, coordinating teams. Fear was everywhere, screaming in alarms in the shaking walls in his own chest, but so was purpose. At one point, a support beam collapsed, pinning Evan's leg. Pain exploded through him. He cried out, fear turning sharp and raw. Carathal moved instantly, lifting the beam with controlled force, freeing him. "You cannot continue," she said urgently. "Yes, I can," Evan replied through clenched teeth. "I'm not done." They stabilized the sector with seconds to spare. When it was over, Evan collapsed, exhausted, shaking, alive. The envoy watched the footage in silence. Later, back in the chamber, the envoy spoke again. "The result is conclusive." Evan looked up, tired but alert, and the envoy's voice was low. "Fear does not control humans." Carathal straightened. "It motivates them," the envoy continued. "And that makes your species unacceptable to dominate." Evan blinked. "Is that good or bad?" The envoy met his gaze. "For the galaxy," he said, "it is terrifying." The envoy departed soon after. The warship undocked, disappearing into the dark. The station breathed again. Evan sat alone in his quarters later, exhausted to his core. Carathal stood nearby, silent. "You stood against them," she said at last. "I was scared the whole time," Evan replied. "Yes," she said, "that is why you won." Somewhere far away, a report was being written, not about one human, but about a species that could not be ruled by fear. And the galaxy was beginning to understand what that truly meant. The station returned to a semblance of normalcy, but nothing was truly normal anymore. Life support hums continued, lights flickered, and the usual hum of mechanical operations persisted, yet there was a new tension in the air. Humans and aliens alike moved carefully, as if aware that something significant had changed. The Varkai envoy's departure had left a deep impression, one that hung over the corridors and whispered into every conversation. Evan Cole moved quietly through his quarters, still recovering from the physical strain of the last crisis. His ribs ached and his arm throbbed intermittently. His body was exhausted, yet his mind felt sharper than ever. Fear had left its mark, not as weakness, but as heightened awareness. Every sound, every vibration of the station felt like it mattered more than ever. He had survived fear itself and acted despite it, and that had changed him. Carathal was there, as she had been for the past week. She remained near him, not intrusively but as a constant presence. Her posture had softened, though the underlying strength in her frame was unmistakable. She had been assigned as his cook and caretaker, but over the last week she had become something more. A guide, a protector, a silent observer of his human resilience. "You are awake," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, neutral, but Evan could detect a subtle tension underneath. "I've been awake for a while," Evan admitted. "Too much to think about, I guess." Carathal stepped closer, her massive form casting a shadow across his quarters. "You have performed beyond expectation," she said. "Not because you are fearless, but because you acted despite fear." Evan let out a short laugh. one of those quiet, shaky laughs that come when exhaustion mixes with disbelief. So, that's why they were scared of me. Because I didn't break. Yes, Carathal replied. Your species, humans, cannot be predicted. We anticipated collapse under fear. You did not collapse. You did not even hesitate when others froze. Evan leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes briefly. I was terrified, he admitted. Every second, but I couldn't stop. Too many people depended on me. I couldn't let them down. And that, Carathal said, is why humans are dangerous to underestimate, not because of strength, not because of numbers, because of resolve. The words echoed in Evan's mind. Dangerous to underestimate, dangerous to predict, dangerous. The word alone made his chest tighten. He had never thought of himself or his species in such terms. Humans were small, weak, fragile, always the underdog. Yet here, standing beside a being who could crush him with ease, he realized something profound. Humans endured, they adapted, and when the pressure rose, they rose higher. Carathal moved to the table, setting down a tray of freshly prepared food. The aroma was warm and comforting, yet Evan barely noticed. His thoughts were elsewhere. You've changed, he said finally. Not me too, I guess, but the way they see humans. You said my species is terrifying now, Carathal nodded slowly. Not terrifying in a simple sense. Not violent or aggressive, terrifying because you cannot be controlled. You endure, you influence each other, you decide, and that makes you unpredictable. That makes you unstoppable under the right conditions. Evan shook his head, trying to make sense of it. Unstoppable. That's a lot to take in. It is, Carathal said, and yet it is the truth. Your actions have already altered perceptions beyond the station. Command channels are discussing adjustments to engagement protocols. My superiors are reviewing human contingency models. Your species may no longer be underestimated in frontier space. Evan's stomach tightened at the weight of her words. He had not set out to prove anything. He had not wanted recognition or change. He had wanted to survive the week, to recover from injury, and perhaps have someone cook him a decent meal. And now, somehow, he had altered the calculations of a species that could dominate entire worlds. He looked at Carathal, who was quietly observing him. And you? What happens to you now? You risked a lot by being here, by supporting me. Her eyes held an unusual depth. I have fulfilled my duties as assigned and exceeded them. My report will reflect the unexpected variables introduced by one human. Personally, I will remain with you. The station administration allows it. My people have no objection, and I wish to continue observing. Evan blinked. Observing me for how long? As long as needed, she replied simply, or as long as you accept my presence. He considered that for a moment. He could have asked her to leave, to go back to her quarters, to remove the constant pressure of her watchful gaze. And yet, he did not. She had been instrumental in keeping him alive, in guiding him through fear and chaos. Her presence was overwhelming, yes, but it had also become a strange comfort. Then stay, he said finally. Carathal nodded. It was a small motion, but it carried weight. For a giant warrior to remain at the side of a fragile human voluntarily was unusual, but she did. She stayed. The following days were quiet but tense. Life on the station returned to routines, but Evan noticed subtle differences. Humans who had witnessed his actions moved differently. They were quieter, more alert, more willing to take initiative. They consulted him for advice in emergencies, not because he commanded them, but because they trusted his judgment. The Varkai presence on the station remained limited, but the staff whispered behind closed doors about the human who had acted while terrified and lived to stabilize a sector alone. Carathal continued to cook, clean, and maintain her assigned tasks, but she also began training Evan quietly. Not combat training, he was too small for that, but mental and situational awareness. How to recognize danger before it happened, how to anticipate system failures, how to influence the behavior of others without issuing direct commands. Every session was exhausting, yet Evan grew sharper, more decisive. Fear still came, but it no longer paralyzed him. One afternoon, Evan walked the corridors with Carathal beside him. He had requested this walk, wanting to see the station beyond his quarters and the control hubs. The corridors were long, metallic, and humming with life support systems. Aliens of all species moved past them, some pausing briefly to acknowledge Carathal, others whispering about Evan. He felt their gazes, but he did not look away. "Do they really understand what I did?" he asked quietly. Carathal considered. "They understand part. The rest is interpretation. Some fear your ability to act under pressure, some respect it, others doubt it is replicable." "Humans are unpredictable even to humans," Evan said with a faint smile. She nodded. "Correct. That is why your species is both fragile and formidable." He looked down at his own hands. "Fragile and formidable, that sounds contradictory." "Only in comparison to others," Carathal replied. "To your own species it is coherent. To those who attempt to control you it is terrifying." The walk continued in silence. Evan felt the weight of what had happened slowly settling into him. He had survived a test that few humans could have. He had faced fear in its purest form, acted under impossible pressure, and lived. Not only that, he had influenced others, saved lives, and altered the perception of an alien species that had once dominated humanity. That night he sat at his table, Carathal serving food silently. He ate slowly, savoring the warmth, the normalcy. Yet he knew that nothing would ever be entirely normal again. "Do you ever fear," he asked suddenly, "that this changes everything for us? For humans?" Carathal looked at him, her golden eyes reflecting dim light. "Fear is always present. What has changed is your response to it. That is what terrifies the galaxy." Evan considered that. He had always thought fear was weakness. Now he realized it was neither weakness nor strength, it was a choice. How one responded to it defined the outcome, and humanity had chosen to respond in ways no other species had anticipated. Weeks passed. The station continued its work. Repairs were made. Supplies were managed. The humans, now more alert and confident, carried on with quiet pride. Carathal remained at Evan's side, her presence both protective and educational. They worked together to improve systems, train others, and ensure that fear would not dominate decisions on Outpost R again. Then came the final acknowledgement. Carathal received a message through her personal console. It was short, formal, and heavy with meaning. Her people had reviewed her report in full. The evaluation of Evan Cole had been approved and circulated to all relevant Varkai command channels. The result was clear. Humans could no longer be dismissed as fragile, predictable, or controllable. They were now recognized as a species capable of extraordinary endurance and resilience under fear. Evan read the message with Carathal beside him. "Looks like I made an impression," he said, half joking, half in awe. "You did more than that," Carathal replied. "You changed assumptions, protocols, and perceptions. You redefined your species in the eyes of another. That is remarkable." Evan leaned back, feeling a strange mixture of pride and exhaustion. "All because I didn't run." "Yes," Carathal said simply, "because you acted while afraid." He looked at her, studying her massive, calm presence. "I suppose I couldn't have done it without you." She inclined her head. "You could have survived alone, but together the outcome was assured." A long silence passed, filled only by the quiet hum of the station. Outside, the red dwarf cast dim light through the station's observation windows. Stars drifted slowly in the blackness beyond, indifferent and eternal. Yet within the station, humanity had made its mark. Evan realized that being small and fragile did not make him irrelevant. Acting despite fear, influencing others, making decisions under pressure, these were the things that mattered. The galaxy may have overlooked humans before, but no longer. Carathal's presence remained steady, a reminder of the week's events, of fear survived, of lives saved. Evan had started as a shy, quiet human who simply wanted to recover from an accident. He had faced a giant alien, the pressure of judgment and the reality of fear itself. And he had survived, not just survived but prevailed. The station was quiet again. He could feel the subtle pulse of life in every corridor, in every system. Humanity had endured. Humanity had influenced. Humanity had proven itself. And Evan Cole, shy human, weak by appearance but formidable in spirit, finally understood what it meant to be truly dangerous, not through strength or violence, but through courage, choice, and resilience. He looked at Carathal and smiled faintly. "I guess humans really are terrifying, huh?" Her golden eyes met his, and for the first time she allowed a hint of approval. "Yes, terrifying in a way that cannot be ignored." Outside the observation window, stars continued their silent drift. And somewhere far away, across the galaxy, calculations were being adjusted, models rewritten, and the concept of humanity reconsidered. A small, fragile species had proven that endurance, courage, and resolve could not be measured by size or strength. Fear would no longer control humans, and the galaxy would never forget that lesson. Evan exhaled deeply, feeling exhaustion and relief mixed together. The week of terror, of impossible tests, of life and death had passed. He was alive. He had survived. And somehow the galaxy itself had shifted because of it. Carathal placed the tray down in front of him, and he took the meal with gratitude. He would eat. He would rest. But deep in his mind, he knew that this was only the beginning. Humans had more to prove, and he was ready. Together, human and Varkai, fragile and massive, small and terrifying, they would face whatever came next. The galaxy had seen one shy human act despite fear, and it had been enough to start changing everything. And somewhere inside him, Evan smiled quietly because he had discovered something extraordinary. Fear was not the enemy. It was the proving ground. And humans could never be broken.